previous evening from drinking and driving. But that's not the worst part to me, I guess. In that very van next to me was her brother, younger brother, and he had no idea. It's a pretty long drive from the ski resort to Baltimore. I remember just driving. The drive felt like forever. I couldn't tell him that his sister was gone. I remember dropping him off at his home, and he was so happy because he loves to ski and snowboard. And I was fighting back the tears, and I knew when he would walk inside, he would find out. This is what Abraham felt on his journey to the mountain. Of course, much heavier, much deeper, for that was his only son. You know, I like to think that if God told me at that moment, Byung, you have to tell him about his sister's death, I'm sure, even looking back, even now, that I would have said, no, God, I cannot do it. It is too difficult. I don't have the heart. And yet Abraham completely obeyed God under such duress and peril. You know, God, I know it's difficult to completely obey God's word. We like to skim from the top. We like to selectively choose what we're going to obey in the Bible and rip the rest apart. But you can't do that. And look at the faith of Abraham. Abraham said to his servants before he traveled farther ahead, he said in verse 5, me and the boy will travel to the mountain alone. And then we will go up the mountain. And then we will worship. And then we will return. What would compel Abraham to believe that they were going to return together? You got to remember that Abraham knows the God that awakened a barren womb in Sarah. A God that resurrected a barren womb within Sarah. He knew this God. So often in our lives, our test makes sense. It makes complete, coherent sense. And that's what makes it tolerable. But what if the test that God gives us this afternoon makes no sense? Then would it become intolerable? And do I still obey? If you look at the logic and the reason behind God's command, it makes no earthly sense. But Abraham obeyed anyway. Abraham obeyed anyway. How did Abraham reconcile these two facts? God planned the future around his son Isaac, and two, God wanted Abraham to kill his son Isaac. How could he reconcile these two contradictions? Faith. Faith. Sometimes in a test, my friends, no one will understand. Because if Abraham ever told someone what he was going to do, they said he was nuts. He's crazy. He's lost it. There are things that God is sending into your life or has sent into your life. A test, per se. And no one will understand but you. I've seen girlfriends break up with their boyfriends and they use the God card. And everybody berates them. Oh, she used the God card. He used the God card. But I look at those scenarios and I say to myself, that's a test. And even though the relationship is sparkling and good, God says, give it up. Let it go. And when these people obey, wow, God is doing a work in them, a unique work that can only be done in them, in you, in me. This test that God sent to Abraham, it was a one-of-a-kind test. And I don't know about you, but I don't want no generic test. I don't want no carbon copy test. I want a real, unique, personal test from God that He made just for me. And when we obey and worship Him in our uncertainty and completely obey His word, our lives begin to matter. Secondly, I want to close with this idea that our worship matters to God when we surrender our best to Him, holding nothing back. Now, I know I've already alluded to this idea, but God is always asking over and over to you and me, especially for those who have a good source of income and money, whether it's from parents or job. God is always asking us, usually in a test, do you love me or my gifts? You have to answer that. You cannot plead the fifth. You must answer that question. Do you love me or my gifts? And by testing where our hunger lies, God is trying our faith. He is sharpening, molding, and purifying our faith. We all have cravings and hungers, whether it's to be popular, known, appreciated, loved, valued. God is going to look inside that chamber where your hunger lies, and He's going to ask you, let it go. Let it go. Do you love me or my gifts? See, we don't want to give God the things that we hold dearest. Like if I have a pair of shoes and I never wear it, and you say, B, can I borrow these or take these? I say, sure, I don't even use it. But you want my Air Force Ones? You want my Timberland boots? No. We all too often give God our excess, our surplus, our leftovers. That's not worship. Would you present Barack Obama something you used before? Would you present your mayor or governor or our head pastor something you have already used that's left over? No. Then why do we offer up to God things we don't care about? That's not worship. That's not worship. We cannot worship without sacrifice. If it doesn't cost you something to be here this Sunday, it doesn't mean much. Yeah, I said it. Doesn't mean much. It doesn't cost you much to pray or to follow God's narrow path. That doesn't mean much. We cannot we cannot worship without sacrifice. Guys, as I close today, I want to remind you that as Abraham did not even spare his one and only son, this is a foreshadowing of Calvary. This is a beautiful foreshadowing of what is to come on the cross through Jesus Christ. And you know why God affirmed Abraham and said, Abraham, don't kill your son, withhold the knife I have provided, I will bless you. I know I'm not a father, but I'm trying to think like one because God and Abraham are both fathers. You know what God was telling Abraham? You understand me. You know me. Because what God was about to do with Jesus was exceedingly more excruciating than what Abraham had to do. Yes, it is familiar.